Prime time. Hey guys, Vape Diver here, doing a little video on the new Kayfun Prime. Really nice looking tank. Vape's even better, probably the finest Kayfun that I've vaped ever. Yeah, it's probably been over a year since I did a video. The last video I did was probably the Kayfun Mini V3, which is a really fantastic tank, but I think the Prime's got it edged, just solely on looks and size. So yeah, vape's great. Nice mouth to lung. Maybe I got some strong lungs, but I mean I could direct lung and hit this on any of the settings. I mean, that's the wide opening setting there. This is the tight, the tight setting, which is probably close to the original Kayfun Light. A little bit of work, but I could still do a direct lung inhale on it. Yeah, so we'll break it down, guys. Do a little build in it, do some vaping. Hats off to Svoemesto for making something that I think a lot of people wanted. You know, I just love the Kayfun. You know, it came out back in the day. It was a game changer. If you were doing rebuildables back then, you were doing mesh wicks, Genesis atomizers. Which were good, you know, they had a great flavor, but they were a pain in the neck to set up, you know, at first. If you weren't doing rebuildables, you were, you know, doing cartomizers and VV Novas and Egos. I also was rebuilding Rios back in the day, sort of a dripper, bottom fed dripper. But so when the Kayfun came out, I mean, it was unlike anything we've seen, you know, a wick down in the juice like that, vacuum fed. It was certainly intriguing, and I love those days. I mean, it was great, you know, to quit smoking and have a hobby like that with the Kayfun. It'll always be in my memory. So you know, I've been a Kayfun fan ever since. And basically every RTA out there now uses the same or pretty close to the same Kayfun design. So we'll show you what it's all about, guys. So guys, this is just a size comparison. You have the V5, the Kayfun Light, the Kayfun Mini V3, and the new Prime. So basically, same base is the Kayfun 5, same airflow, you know, a push in to turn it, and if you had the V5, you know that the juice control has to kind of be open in order for you to flip down this thing and then turn it for the different settings. You'll have little dots for the airflow. It's you know, a hexagon, so there's six different airflow settings. You can see the one little dot, two little dots, so on and so forth. That sleeve pushes in. If you want it on number 1, you just clips into the number that you want and exposes the air hole there. So same airflow is the Kayfun 5. Pretty nice and tight. Once you got it set, you know, it definitely doesn't go anywhere. Got the base, Prime, your numbers. It's got a little logo on the chimney and a little svoemesto engraven on the drip tip. Drip tips you can take out. They're a little hard to get out, but definitely comes out. Ugh. Once you have a little juice on there, it comes out a little easier. And just like the Kayfun 5, you can take off the little tip here and put a different color on there. So yep, that's how it looks on the outside, guys. Nice. As for measurements, 22 millimeter width. From the base to the top to the bottom of the drip tip without the drip tip is 45.63. With their drip tip is 55.56. So yeah, without the drip tip, yeah, about 46 millimeters. Sure, it's nothing you've not seen before, but you know, you got your top cap and drip tip, glass, chimney section, again with that logo there. You got your deck, you got your top of your glass where you fill, a little different fill design, nice. And your deck, it has the little thingamajiggers to trap your wires like the Kayfun 5. Really cool. Little horseshoe wire catchers. Yeah. Oops. Basically the same exact deck, pretty darn close. The size is the same as the Kayfun Mini V3, except, you know, the V3 Mini don't have the little wire catchers. The center insulator thing is elongated a little bit on this one. Instead of just a round hole, air hole, the channels are about the same, for two holes in each one, but overall it's exactly the same diameter. Deck is the V3 Mini. The little insulator, same as the V3 Mini. That was added after the V3 Mini release. This comes with it. So yeah, that's what it looks like. So every once in a while, I guess if you want to clean, you can take off the bottom screw, take off the bottom plate, and you can take off the airflow ring. You can see all your different airflow holes from the smallest to the biggest. Probably a good idea once you get it to take that a little wrench just to make sure they have that little nut tight. That little nut cinches down the deck, the block. So yeah, that's basically all your pieces and parts, guys. I'm gonna do a build. I like 26 gauge because I vape maybe 20-25 watts. You know, a lot of vapors using the Kayfun are maybe 15 watts or lower. You know, maybe that's more of a 28 gauge. I can certainly vape 28 gauge at 23 watts too, at 1.5 ohms. But I vape rayon, so I just find the 26 gauge is a little bit more sturdy. So when I press the rayon through, because it's got to be a little bit more tighter through the coil than cotton, I just like the 26 gauge being a little bit more sturdy. But the vape is pretty much the same. I'll vape 26 gauge, 1 ohm, or 28 gauge 1.5 ohms, I can't really tell the difference. If I'm vaping them both at the same wattage, they're both the same, you know, they're pretty much, I can't really tell the difference, you know. So we'll do a quick little build in here. I just know that, you know, about 7 wraps of this 26 gauge is going to give me about 1 ohm. So that's what I'm going to do. It's a 2.7 millimeter drill bit. I'm going to do a contact coil, so I like to just go a bunch of wraps. I mean, I'm probably making 10 wraps right there, and then just pull them out until I count where I need them. Pull them out, pull this side because they were the loosest ones, and then I got a nice little contact coil there. I'm going to have to get my head down in there to count that. I think that's 8. I'll take one more off right there, and we'll mount it. Alright guys, I got my coil mounted. I use these visors, mag visor, because I just can't see close up. There's no way I can mount that coil on camera because my head would be totally in the shot. But I got it mounted, 7 wrap, 26 gauge, a little contact coil. Most people now use space. I use space sometimes too. It just depends. You know, with the space coil, you don't have to strum it. That was locked. You don't have to strum a space coil really, so I don't know, I just feel different moods. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a contact coil, sometimes space coil. I don't think there's really much of a difference. Because really, once you strum it, what you're doing is you're opening them up at them a little bit anyways. I mean, if those coils stayed deadlocked against each other, I think it would always be shorted. So strumming just puts a tiny bit, a little gap in there anyways. So one thing I've always done, coil height off deck. This is a 1.6 millimeter needle, and I've just always, my vape, you know, I've just always liked it, you know, where I could fit that 1.6 millimeter gap from the coil. Some people like it a little closer to the deck, you know, some people like it a little higher. But yeah, it's just personal preference. I always, you know, just gauge it with this little guy right there. It's just always set up the best for me at about 1.6 millimeters. So there's the coil. I think that looks pretty good. And we'll go ahead and wick it. Alright guys, we're going to wick it. I'm a rayon guy. I just prefer it a little bit more. You know, a lot of people, you know, building coils, I mean, it's pretty easy. Once you get the coil mounted and, you know, and you set the height off the deck, you know, it's pretty much, you know, going to perform just like anybody else's. You know, the real key is in the wicking. I mean, even after, you know, years of wicking, you can still add a bit more into the coil than your previous time, or a bit less, and those little minuscule amounts do make a difference, you know. So, you know, it's the most important part, I believe, you know, of the whole rebuilding process, is to strive to, you know, get that wicking correct. You know, it's definitely an art, you know. So, you know, unlike cotton, rayon, you know, should be, you know, a little bit more packed into the coil than cotton. It's a little bit more tighter, you know, than cotton. You don't want to do it, you know, too tight, you know, or too loose. But, you know, I kind of go through it to the end and then come back, and, you know, after a while you kind of get used to exactly how much you need in there. But I find that, you know, trimming, you know, trimming the tails is also, you know, a big thing with the kayfuns. You know, I just couldn't, you know, cut these tails off and stick them into the juice wells ledges just like this. It's way too much to be stuffing into those juice wells. These tails need to be trimmed. And my Kayfun Mini V3, when I first got it, with this ledge design, you know, other than the you know, Kayfun Light, where it's an exposed ledge, these are enclosed. And I started out and I was putting too much in there, and I kind of knew it when I was opening up the juice control, and I wasn't seeing those bubbles until like 2.5 or 3 turns. And I thought that was normal, you know. I says, yeah, you know, 2-3 turns, you know, and then I start seeing the bubbles. But my optimum amount of tails in these channels, I ultimately got, when I open up the juice control about 1 turn, I start seeing those bubbles, maybe 1.25 turns. And ultimately, all I open up the juice control is about 1.25 turns to 1.5 turns. And it's at 25, 23 watts, that's more than enough. I think if you open it up more than that, you're actually getting a little bit, the wick too wet. So if you find with the Kayfun Mini V3 or even the Kayfun 5 or this Prime that you need 2.5 turns before you see those bubbles come out, chances are is you got too much wick tail stuffed into those channels. So I'm going to go ahead and trim these wick tails, you know, to the size that I think is optimum for this Prime and the Kayfun 3, because they're basically the same. So, being that I set up my coil 1.6 millimeters off of the deck, the length of the tail is usually, when it comes down to this black O-ring, when I bend these over, I line them up with that black O-ring, and it's always the perfect length. So length is one thing, and thickness of the tail is the other. So I start off by getting it close to that black O-ring like that, getting it close to the black O-ring, and then I start, you know, actually reducing the you know, the thickness of my tails. I'll usually take a little off the top, take a little off the bottom, a little off the 2 sides. until I get something that looks kind of like that. So now I'm kind of looking head on right there and pressing it down, and the length, the width of this from left to right is about the same the length of the actual juice channel. See that? I could just feel it, you know, it's a lot, I mean, a lot thinner than this side. And then once I get it close like that, and then I press it down like that, it's just above, just right at that black O-ring. Now obviously if you're setting your coil up 2 millimeters off the deck, that's going to change, but in my coil height, that always works out just right, just like that. And like I said, I mean, you could tell by flavor. I mean, if you're pushing too much, you know, cotton into your channels, you're going to definitely taste it, and it's going to take a lot more open juice control to see those bubbles if you have too much in there. All right, guys, so I got my wick all trimmed down. I really try to, you know, make both sides identical. You know, when you pull cotton or rayon through, you know, you always get that one side that kind of gets more dense than the other. And, you know, if you don't even that out, one thing you'll notice when you rebuild is you'll get a darker color on one side of the wick than the other. And that's because, you know, one of the wick tails is perhaps too much and stuffed into one of the juice channels more so than the other, and it's not wicking optimally. So, you know, if you're vaping this for 3 or 4 days or how many mils, and you open it up, your wick colors on both sides should be dead even. You shouldn't get a darker tail than the other. That's definitely telling you that, you know, something's not equal there. So, you know, just go ahead and press, you know, these tails into the channel. And we'll go ahead and wick it up and talk a little bit more about this awesome new kayfun and give her a vape. But yeah, this is the trickiest part, you know, wicking, getting that, you know, precise amount of, you know, cotton or whatever wicking material you use into those channels. You know, I'm sure everybody at this point who's watching this has, you know, been doing rebuildables for a while, and they're just sitting there saying, oh geez, not another one of these videos. I want to know more about the actual device. So let me get the juice and we'll get her saturated. All right, guys, so I got some sludge from HHV, best juice in the planet. And, you know, whatever you're using to press these tails in here, you know, you can feel that wick. You know, if you got whatever you're using and you can't get your you know, tool in there, you know, you're stuffing too much in there, you know. And you could also stuff not enough. But you can tell, you know, you want this wick definitely to touch the bottom of this deck. And you kind of get a feel for it. So this 26 gauge 2.7 millimeter build came out to about 0.9. Sludge it up, sludge it up. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? Kind of even. Density of both tails feels even to me. This way we're going to get, you know, even wicking. If you got one tail that's a lot denser than the other, you know, it does affect the wicking. So let's button her up, and we'll take a few vapes and talk a little bit more about it. I always go ahead and put a little juice on these O-rings every time, make things slide a lot nice. You know, I'm going to go ahead and measure exactly how much liquid this is. I've thought it took more than 2 millimeters, you know, and that's what it states. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up with my syringe. I got a 2 millimeter syringe here, 2 milliliters. I could get a little bit more in there. And you don't really want to fill it up all to the top. You always want to leave a little bit of air space in there. A little bit more than 2 mils. So we'll go ahead and open up this juice control. I usually look at the opening here and give it a full turn. See, I'm seeing bubbles right now, 1 turn. That's about 1.25 turns. And I got bubbles. So I usually go another little bit after that, maybe 1.5 turns. And we're good to go, guys. Alright guys, I got the Provari P2 Provari 2 in short mode, just to get a look on there. Looks pretty nice. So if you guys are used to or really like the Kayfun Light, you are going to love the Prime. I mean, there's definitely going to be a setting on the Prime that is just like the Light. So as you know, for draw, you know, for airflow. Here's the Jack Vapor. Looks really nice. And if you are used to the Kayfun Mini V3, the Prime is slightly tighter. But then again, you could adjust the Kayfun Mini 3 tight too. I vape the Kayfun Mini V3, you know, on with the screw kind of loose, so the prime is a little tighter. But the Kayfun Mini V3 is one of my favorite tanks, and the draw on the prime, it's very close. Here's the macro. Here's how it looks on the macro. S-body DNA. Nice. On the VCT Mini. Nice looking setup. So it's a nice small tank. And if you vape the Kayfun 5 without the reducer, that's definitely going to be, this is going to be tight feeling for you. I vape the Kayfun 5 with the reducer, and with the reducer you can get a similar vape to this. Here's the old Vapor Shark. Just looking at size. And my favorite, Stratum. That's one nice setup right there, boys. That is beautiful. Another Stratum. The Prime is it's an awesome tank, guys. Like I said, if you're been vaping the Kayfun Light for years and you want something just with a little bit more, you know, to it, something you know, updated, top fill, this is, you know, this is the tank to get. If you vape the Kayfun Mini V3 and just found that a little bit too tall, this tank you're gonna love. If you like the Kayfun 5 with the reducer and you find that a little bit too heavy and tall, this is the tank. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out, guys. So guys, appreciate you watching the video. Definitely a great tank. One of the best tanks I've ever vaped. It just doesn't get much better than this, period. I mean, for an RTA, it's all you'll ever need. I mean, you know, it's for mouth to lungers. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you're a lung inhaler, sub-ohm, obviously, you probably won't even be watching this video. But for mouth to lung RTA, the Prime is prime, and it's an awesome tank, and great flavor. I think it's better flavor than the V5. I think it's right there, you know, about the same. It's very, very similar to the Kayfun Mini V3. It's been a long time since I vaped the Kayfun Light, a couple years. So to be honest, I don't know. I don't really remember, you know, that, you know. I think it's just as good, if not better, for vapor. Obviously, you can do a lot more in the Prime than you can with the Kayfun Light. You can, you know, vape it at twice the wattage, and you got, you know, top fill, juice control. It's just beautiful. I mean, the size is what I've been looking for. I just don't see them ever, you know, making anything that would suit my needs more than the Kayfun Prime. Great clouds, great flavor. You know, it's got it all, guys. Well, thanks. Vape Diver out. Appreciate you watching.